Welcome to another video in the Event Organizer series. Here, I want to share with you how I think about the budgeting process, especially when it comes to the talents. Talents could be your dance teachers, it could be the musicians, it could be the MC, the technicians that you're having, the DJs, and so on. And this is a template you can use, and it basically goes through every important cost factor that they have. So, for example, the core agreement you make with them, the cost of service, the cost of transportation, the cost of stay, cost of other things that comes, and then you sum all of that together. One of the things I want you to share first is to always think about the service costs as net costs. This is a budgeting sheet, it's not a cash flow statement, and those are two separate things. The good thing with the event business is typically if you don't do the other things wrong around the event, you usually don't have to worry a lot about the cash flow situation, because typically money comes in way ahead of time of the expenses going out. Majority of the tickets are sold before the event, and majority of the costs occur after the event. But of course, you might run into troubles where the payment provider refuses to pay out the money that is on account in the name of security. So if you use PayPal or Stripe and so on, you need to be careful. You need to have built enough reputation so that they don't suddenly look at your account going up a lot, and they will hold on to that until there is no complaints 6 months down the line. Then you're stuck with having to pay a lot of invoices later after the event, but they still haven't released your money, which can be a significant challenge. So you have to be careful about that. But fundamentally, cash flow outside of that situation, cash flow is actually one of our least concerns in the event industry, which is quite a luxury situation to be in compared to many other type of industries. When it comes to budgeting, you want to always think about the cost you have after value added tax, the VAT tax. So you want to distinguish between net and gross versus, or netto and brutto in German. Always just double check what are you looking at. When you get a statement of price, whether it's a quote you get from the talents or whether you look at the flight costs or the hotel costs and so on, you always want to make sure that you look at the netto price or convert to netto price and use that as your main source of calculation here. Otherwise, you'll be in a bad surprise basically later when you pay that invoice. If the talent assumed it's a net and you assumed it's a gross calculation, then that's the difference is really too much for you to take as a shock, so to say. So clarify that ahead of time. I recommend, as a service provider or business creator or event organizer, always count in netto, and then you'll deal with the VAT tax separately. The other thing that is a pro tip is to think about planned versus actual costs as you go along. So as you do the planning, just fill out the planning fields and then leave the actual one to the moment you actually pay those costs and have those understanding, because later in the postmortem you can look at these and sort of try to get a better sense of where things went different from what you expected. Some things were more expensive, some things cheaper. Just having this opportunity to look at it again and calibrate is really powerful, especially when you want to repeat and do these events over and over again. Your ability to be spot on your budget just increases dramatically. Now, let's go through each of these case by case. So obviously you start with clarifying who it is, but then you start putting notes about what are some of the conditions they have. So for example, minimum number of work or amount of work that they want to have, or other things like some special arrangement around their traveling, their stay, and so on. You want to put that in there. Then for each kind of service they provide, they might have different pricing. So for example, in the dance industry, it's very common that if you teach alone, you have one price. If you teach with a partner, you have another price. If you want to judge or speak or something like that, or perform, there's other prices around that. So you want to parse those out and sort of have a clear understanding of what it is you should include in your budget. And then for each of those services, you have a separate workload calculation. So when it comes to teachers, for example, you might want to know the number of classes. Then it's important to understand like what is the class structure you're offering. Is it 60-minute classes? Is it 70 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours, and so on? And then what's also important to have in those calculations is how are you dealing with breaks inside of the classes? Are those breaks are included in the quote you give the teachers? Are they excluded? There is a separate conversation whether that should be how that should be, but right now I just want to make sure you think about those in a clear way and state those clearly or negotiate them properly with the talents you're bringing on. And then you get the total hours. So here's, for example, sometimes we make the mistake of thinking units, and the unit might be different from the, for example, if it's a class unit is 70 minutes, but actually the price is per hour. You wanna parse that apart. Same thing with the other type of rates, and then you get this, and then you have, like, for example, other costs like the performances, competition judging, and things like that. So you get the full service price, summing all of those things per, so you have the number of hours multiplied by the rate and adding the additional services. And so transportation, I think at least you need to negotiate or have this clarity with the artist, whether you're talking about the from airport to your venue back to airport is what you're talking about, or from their apartment, house, hotel to the airport to your venue and back all the way. So like different organizers and different teachers or talents deal with them differently. You need to have that clarity when you talk to your different talents. Then you might have local transportation costs, and then you sum all of that together. Cost of stay. So here you have, for example, the number of days a person stays. So here as an example, we are taking from Chase Festival. So that was a 4-day event. So how many breakfasts are included? How many lunches? How many times do you want to think about snacks in between lunch and dinner, for example? Then you have the dinner, but you also want to think about after dinner, like backstage food, for example. That's really appreciated and needed if you want your talents to be involved at the event beyond the moments they are just having a work. And then, of course, the accommodation or hotel situation you have, and how many nights is that, and then you get the total cost there. Here, for example, I want to show you that sometimes you do a basic calculation based on your expectations. So, for example, if everything happens in a hotel, then maybe you think about 15 euro. Actually, now it's maybe more 20 euros for breakfast. Then how much does it cost for the lunch and so on? You sum all of those together and you get a budget that is, for one person is maybe this much. But then when you think about, okay, I'm going to have 10, 20, 30, 40 talents, and this budget suddenly sort of blows up quite a lot. And that's the reality of the event. But then when you look at the number like that, when you look at 6,000 euro, you're like, what else can I do for 6,000 euro that provides all of these services, but is maybe a better experience? Or maybe I can get something that is 20% cheaper and it's the same or better experience, for example. So you can talk to your talents and see if there are other solutions. So, for example, personally, like depending on event to event, like in some cases, I really appreciated when the event organizer organized a big Airbnb where every talent had their own rooms, but we were basically in an apartment and we had a great time together there. But then I expect the talent, for example, the organizers to make sure the fridge is stuffed with good food. There is the drinks. Somebody comes to help with cleaning and maybe even preparing some food if lunch and dinners is supposed to happen there, or somehow that experience actually becomes a better experience, not a worse experience. And the same thing with transportation costs. For example, in some cases, it might be the best option to hire a professional service to do, for example, airport transportation. This way you don't have to deal with unprofessional people to deal with this service. You know, you can rely on them. They go and pick people up, bring them back together. And For example, we found a service that ended up cheaper than us trying to find all these different weird solutions that end up typically become much more inconvenient for both the talents and the organizers. I always recommend that you have a transparent conversation with your talents. Now, depending on their situation and their needs, you might come up with different solutions. So for example, in some cases, some talents just want to maximize the money they put in their pocket when they go home. So they might say, you know what, don't give me fancy hotel breakfast and stuff like that. Let's be budget friendly on those things, but help me get a cut on that savings, for example. Or some of them saying, you know what, I just need to make sure I can close my hotel room. I don't need to be nice to anybody. I need to zone out in between the gigs I'm having because I'm traveling every weekend. I'm just too much on the road. I just don't want to care about anything else than my private time, so to say. So, you need to have this conversation with the talents that you're bringing. Sometimes you find the better solution than just following the standard procedures, so to say. So there's a lot of room to find creative win-win-win situations when it comes to looking at your budget on an individual basis, but also as a whole. Then you shouldn't forget about the other costs that are associated to this. So for example, sometimes we want to give event merch to our talents. Sometimes we want to give them extra things like a massage or other kind of experiences. But there's also equipment cost. If you have musicians, you might need to rent special instruments or professional instruments. You might, if the MC or the teachers want to have special equipment, you might need to rent that. And then in some cases, you need to also include supporting staff. So often this can be volunteers. Always have this in mind that you might need a special technician for somebody, or the MC need a runner to help them collect the information and without having to leave the stage necessarily. But also depending on what kind of talents you're bringing, you need to think about other costs. Like in Germany, you have Künstler Sozialkasse, where you need to think about the musicians. You need to pay, for example, around 4% more for the gage, the cost of their service that you're paying them. So you have to put all of those in order to get your final sum. All right, this is what I wanted to share with you today. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me, PM me, or write in the comment sections. I'm happy to help. I want to learn about your situation so I can understand how to better build a software that can serve for event organizers, dance school owners, and so on. And yes, until the next one, my friend. All right.